If you love great stories, you've come to the right place. Subscribe to my channel to make sure you don't miss any new videos. Like and share this video with your friends if you enjoyed it, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Sorry for the delay. The damn electricity company left me without light supply for more than 2 days. In a while, I will upload another chapter, which will be yesterday's one. In one of Nevermore's numerous classrooms, the 12th grade students were having a class. The subject being taught was advanced werewolf transformations. So in the class, there were only werewolves. There were about 30 students, far more than the psychics, who were barely in the double digits. That's the key to controlling your transformation. No matter if it's a full moon or daytime, said the professor, who had a long, unkempt beard, long hair, and crescent glasses. His appearance was very scruffy. If you want to work in the council, you must control your transformation, or you will be very limited, added the professor. You couldn't take on dangerous creatures or criminal outcasts if you depended on the full moon to have your full power. Just then the bell rang, signaling the end of the class. That's all for today. This is your last year and it will be tough. Your rankings will be important for your future. Try hard and always be up to date. You may go, said the professor, closing his book. With class over, the students began to put their things away and talk to their friends as they got up from their desks. At a desk, a girl with light brown hair was standing still with her eyes fixed on her book. Gia, let's go eat, said a long black-haired Asian girl with long black hair, approaching the brown-haired girl. Erica, yeah, let's go, said Gia, putting her things away and walking towards the cafeteria with her best and only friend at Nevermore. What's wrong? Asked Erica, looking at her friend strangely. She was always chatty and upbeat. It was rare for her to be silent in the cafeteria. I was thinking about what the professor said. It's our senior year, and we're just as unpopular as we were our first year, said Gia in a depressing mood. Don't remind me. People confuse my name, said Erica, catching her friend's mood. We can't go on like this. We have to make our mark before we finish high school, said Gia with a new sting in her eyes. Her attitude took a 180-degree turn. She couldn't stay depressed any longer. It's easier said than done. We are mixed races. I can see the invisible barrier they put up when they talk to us, Erica said, getting even more depressed. Both Gia and Erica were mixed race. In Erica's case, her father was a werewolf and her mother was a vampire. She ended up having her father's werewolf genes. She was not lucky enough to have both genes. Otherwise, she would be very powerful and superior to her classmates. Who could underestimate her? As for Gia, it was worse. Her father was a normie, and her mother was a werewolf. She was born with a higher percentage of outcast genes and lived with her mother from a young age since her father abandoned them. Her bloodline, not being 100% werewolf, was weaker than that of the average student, so everything related to her powers cost her more. The werewolf transformation was only achieved a few months ago, when most had achieved it a year and a few months ago. She was a late bloomer. You must be positive. There's a party tonight. We can go and start leaving our legacy. Jack will go, Gia said, with emphasis on the latter. Jaxie? Asked Erica with renewed interest. Gia nodded with a slight smile. She knew her friend had a crush on Jack since they entered Nevermore. Jack is one of the most popular students in his senior year. Unlike the other popular ones, he's nice to everyone, which is why Erica ended up falling in love with him. But he already has a girlfriend, and the worst part is that his girlfriend is Riley, said Erica, getting depressed again. Riley was one of the most popular girls in her senior year and a scary girl. She didn't understand how someone as nice as Jaxie could be with her. You don't have to worry about that. I heard the two of them fight. I don't think it will last long, though, since they always fight and then come back. But this is your chance to strike up a conversation with him, Gia said in a low tone, approaching Erica. Oh, it's true. It's the best chance I'll ever have. How do you know all that? Asked Erica. If I want to stop being invisible, I must be aware of all the rumors and gossip. I've eavesdropped on several conversations, replied Gia, puffing out her chest with pride for some reason. You have my respect. Fine, we'll go to that party today, said Erica, who also wanted to stop being unpopular. Later that night, both girls dressed as best they could and slipped out of their dorm room in the direction of the clandestine party. It was to be held in a disused hall near the gymnasium. The seniors had set it up for a party. It's here, quite a ways from the main building, commented Gia, seeing several familiar faces entering the hall through a double door. Music could be heard on the other side. Better, if any teachers find this, it won't be any good, said Erica, feeling nervous for several reasons. First, because it was a clandestine party. If they were caught, they would be punished. Second, because they had to leave their mark, something she saw as unlikely. Let's go before they close, said Gia, taking Erica by the arm and walking quickly. Stop, only seniors are allowed, said a tall, dark-haired boy who was standing guard at the door. We are seniors, said Gia, and the boy looked at her strangely. As much as he wanted to make memories, he couldn't remember either of the two girls. We had a class with you today, Archie. In advanced werewolf transformation, I sit on your right side, Erica said. Oh, sure. Come on in, said Archie, not remembering, but since they knew where he sat in the advanced werewolf class, it must be true. As they were about to enter, 3 girls blocked the exit. The middle one was a tall brunette with long black hair. Gia and Erica recognized her as Riley Brielle, the most popular and bad girl in their grade. No half-breeds allowed at this party, Riley said, with an evil grin, sipping alcohol from her glass. Oh, it was the half-breeds, thought Archie, remembering that there were 2 half-caste outcasts in his class. As far as he was concerned, he didn't care about such things. He didn't discriminate, but he wouldn't pick on Riley to defend them either. Oh, come on. Riley, before Gia could continue speaking, Riley spilled her entire drink all over her, drenching her with alcohol. Don't say my name with that foul mouth, half-breed. You're the worst of the 2. A half-normie, half-werewolf. Sharing a class with you is a disgrace, Riley said with contempt towards Gia. Close the doors, Archie. Everyone's here, added Riley, going back inside with her friends. Archie took one look at Gia and Erica, and without thinking much more, he closed the doors. Are you okay, Gia? Asked Erica, concerned to see her friend soaking wet. Yes, let's go back, said Gia in a low tone, wiping her face a bit and turning around to go back to her bedroom. Her mood was no longer positive like before. Her eyes were watery, but she held back the urge not to shed tears. Where are you going? That's not the way to the dorm, asked Erica. I want to clear my head a bit. You go back first, replied Gia, and she left Erica behind, who sighed and let her friend be alone. Is it so different that I'm half-normie? Thought Gia, depressed as she wandered the deserted corridors of Nevermore. For some reason, she remembered Carrie, a girl from a novel who is bullied by her classmates and ends up making a massacre at her school thanks to her psychic powers. Carrie was a book she loved. However, she wasn't thinking about doing a massacre. She just felt that she had some similarities to Carrie. With depressing and unoptimistic thoughts, she turned a corner, and halfway down the aisle, she noticed a boy looking at a vending machine. This fucking machine, cursed the boy, who was wearing a black Adidas sports outfit with white stripes. His hair looked freshly wet. He looked like he had taken a bath. Over his neck, he wore a white towel. Luke Poe, thought Gia dumbfounded, immediately recognizing the boy cursing at the vending machine. Seconds ago, she was thinking about Carrie, and the boy in front of her was the person who wrote said play. Everyone at Nevermore knew this boy. Even though he was a 10th grader, even the seniors knew him. He was arguably one of the most popular people at Nevermore and the most famous, no doubt because of his reputation as a successful writer. A famous and successful 15-year-old writer. His work, Carrie, sold over 1 million copies the first year it came out. He belonged to the Poe family, which, despite being the only living member, was still an old and famous family of psychics. His great-great-grandfather, Edgar Allan Poe, was very famous in both the Norman and outcast worlds. On top of that, he had swept the floor with 2 older students last year. A video came out of him aggressively and overwhelmingly defeating them. However, that was not the most important event he participated in. The most astonishing of all was last year's Poe Cup. Unknown hooded men attacked students on Raven Island, murdering a psychic student. Luke killed one of the attackers. Not even the senior participants had managed such a feat, and they were two powerful werewolves, Andrew and Tommy. "Should I break this damn machine?" thought Luke. He had noticed the presence of a person but thought nothing of it. It had been several days since he'd gotten the card to use the VIP bathroom. The best thing that has happened at Nevermore since the beginning of the year. The bathroom was gigantic and had many amenities. He used it late at night, so he could spend several hours relaxing undisturbed, watching shows in the hot tub, eating popcorn and stuff. "I have nothing to lose, be brave," said Gia to herself, encouraging herself. The night couldn't get any worse. At best, she would be ignored by Luke. "Hi," said Gia, approaching Luke. She was very nervous. She had loved Carrie and Luke's new novel. If her friend Erica had a crush on Jake C., her crush would be Luke, although her competition was much greater. Luke turned his head and looked at the unknown girl. The girl had light brown hair, combed in two high buns on each side of her head, with bangs falling softly on her forehead. Her face is fair-skinned and rounded, with slightly rosy cheeks and large brown eyes. As for her clothing, she wears a sweater with bright colors. The sweater is mostly purple with pink accents. She was short in stature with a delicate figure. The girl was groomed. The only strange thing was that her hair was soaked with water or something like that. "Hi," said Luke, returning the greeting, then looking back at the vending machine. He wasn't planning on putting in another $1, even though he's a rich millionaire. "Let me help you," said Gia, approaching the vending machine. She tapped it several times with her fist in different places. Seconds later, the Coke went down, and Luke was able to drink his soda without breaking school property. "Thanks, how did you fix it?" asked Luke, opening his Coke and taking a sip. "You're welcome. It's not the first time I've used this machine. I already got the hang of it when it jams," said Gia with a smile. "Oh, you must teach me that trick," said Luke, interested. It won't be the last time he uses this faulty machine, knowing it will come in handy. He doesn't want to use his telekinetic powers for something so mundane. "It's a secret technique. Sorry, I can't go spreading it around," said Gia with a mysterious smile. "What a cheapskate," Luke said with a slightly amused smile. "I can offer you some Coke for the knowledge. What do you say?" asked Luke, holding out his arm for Gia to take the Coke. "An indirect kiss," thought Gia, looking at the Coke, especially the place where Luke had been drinking from. "Deal," said Gia without a second thought, and taking the Coke from Luke. She then began to drink it at a slow pace. She should be thirsty, thought Luke. After drinking the Coke, Gia began to explain to Luke the strokes needed to unlock the vending machine. Also, the necessary force that needed to be used. "Thanks for the method. Here," Luke said, passing his towel to Gia. He had noticed the girl's head was soaked. "For me?" asked Gia, taking the towel and looking at it as if it was the cure for cancer. "Yes, to dry you off. Then you give it back to me." "Bye," said Luke, walking towards his bedroom. If the girl recognized him, she should recognize him in the cafeteria to give him back his towel. "Wait," exclaimed Gia, and Luke stopped and looked at her. "Can you pass me your number? So later we can arrange a place and return your towel," said Gia, looking at the floor nervously. "Yeah, sure. What's your name?" asked Luke. "Gia." A few minutes later, they both had their numbers already dialed. Gia returned to her bedroom in disbelief. "I got Luke Poe's number, and his towel, and an indirect kiss," thought Gia with a smile as she walked back to her dorm. She inwardly thanked Riley for soaking her and not letting her into the party. "I'm hungry. What are you guys ordering today?" asked Xavier, walking towards the cafeteria with Luke and Ajax. "The usual," Ajax replied. His mood had improved, although since the death of Sabrina, the fake Sabrina, his personality had changed, and he was now more emo. "I won't be eating with you today," Luke said without elaborating. "Oh, you have a date. asked Xavier with a slight smile. Not a date, just a girl I met a few days ago, Luke said with a grimace. He had agreed to have lunch with Gia today, and she would return his towel while he was at it. He was surprised at himself for how nice he had been to the unknown girl, but what was done was done. Okay, have a nice lunch. We'll be with Bianca and her friends, Xavier said without probing further. When he had his lunch ready on his tray, Luke started looking for Gia. He quickly found her and saw how she raised her hand to call him, so he started walking towards her. Accompanying Gia was an Asian girl with long black hair. Luke chatted with Gia these days and knew it was her friend named Erica. Oh God, you were telling the truth, said Erica, watching as Luke approached their table. Of course, said Gia with an offended air. Her friend didn't believe her that she had run into Luke, especially since she had gotten his number and towel. Hi Luke, how was your first class? Asked Gia with enthusiasm and a big smile. Hi, it was good if a bit boring. Professor Mayer talks slow, Luke replied. Yeah, his classes always got boring to me. Plus, he doesn't let a single fly, said Gia with a chuckle, and Luke nodded. That's true, how was your class? Asked Luke. Good, we had fencing lessons with Professor Vlad. Oh yeah, you don't know what happened, said Gia, starting to tell everything with details and great enthusiasm. Luke listened attentively as he ate his breakfast and contributed some comments. Erica watched the conversation between Luke and Gia, not believing what she was witnessing. According to the rumors, Luke's personality was not the best in the world. Yet here, he was listening intently to her talkative and enthusiastic friend with a not at all displeased expression. Erica wasn't the only one watching Luke and Gia. Gia's classmates were watching with surprise that their classmate was having lunch with Luke Poe. Riley, who had scorned and humiliated Gia a few days ago, could not believe that she was now happily talking to Luke Poe, a student who is much more popular than her. Where are you going, Kat? Asked Riley. Seeing her friend standing up, she noticed that just like her, she was looking towards Luke's table. I'll be right back, said Kat without giving a specific answer. Hi, Luke, greeted Kat with a charming smile. Gia stopped her incessant chatter and looked at Kat with surprise. She knew this girl, as she was close friends with Riley. What bothered her most was that there was a picture circulating nevermore, a picture of Kat next to Luke. What do you want? Asked Luke with little patience. He was enjoying his chat with Gia and had been interrupted. Besides that, this girl posted a picture with him without his consent. He let her sleep in his room, and that's how he paid her. Kat was surprised by the cold way Luke responded to her. No guy ever talked to her like that. Besides, she thought she had something more intimate with Luke. I've been texting you for days, and you haven't responded. The picture thing was a mistake. I sent it to a friend, and somehow it started getting passed around to more and more people, Kat said more sheepishly. I didn't respond to you because I'm busy, Luke said vaguely. He didn't want to tell her in front of everyone that he wasn't interested in her anymore. Gia and Erica, hi, said Riley, appearing behind Kat. Besides her, Archie and a few other guys showed up. Hi, said Erica and Gia shyly. It's nice to meet you, Luke. I read your 2 novels. Those are fabulous, said Riley with a smile. Nodded Luke dryly without feeling praised. The last thing he needed was compliments from random people. Riley held her tray and along with her companions was about to sit at Luke, Gia, and Erica's table. Since there were only 3 of them, there was room for several more people. What are you doing? Asked Luke, losing what little patience he had. The last thing he wanted was to share lunch with people he didn't know, enough that he had to put up with Gia's friend, who kept staring at him while he ate. Can't we sit here? We're Gia and Erica's classmates, Riley said. Gia cursed in her mind what a scoundrel Riley was, but she didn't dare to say anything against her. Luke, although he didn't know about the problems between Gia and these classmates, could tell from Gia's shy attitude, so he doubted that she would get along with these people. You are her companions, but not mine. Go back to your table, Luke replied, dismissively waving them away before he lost any more patience. The dining room fell silent. Everyone was watching the scene going on at Luke's table. Xavier and Ajax from their table were shaking their heads. Wednesday, who was eating breakfast alone in the corner, watched with little interest. If it had been her, she would have swept the floor with those flies by now. "Have respect for your seniors, boy," exclaimed Archie angrily. He wouldn't tolerate such a disrespectful brat. "Respect," thought Luke with a frown. A vein stood out on his forehead. He was eating quietly, and these people came to bother and wanted to sit down without even asking. Luke extended his hand towards Archie, curling his fingers slightly in a gripping gesture. Suddenly, Archie felt as if an invisible hand was strangling him. His eyes widened in panic, bringing his hands to his neck trying to free himself, but no one was strangling him in sight. Kat, Riley, and the others in their group felt an overwhelming pressure that almost brought them to their knees. "Should I kill this shit?" wondered Luke. Archie gritted his teeth hard. For every second that passed, the force clenching him increased, and he had less airs and graces. As for Kat, Riley, and the others, he just used his telekinesis to generate pressure, as if gravity had increased. "This personality is correct to that of the rumors," thought Erica, looking at Luke with some fear. Although she enjoyed watching Riley suffer, she annoyed them for a long time now. She had it coming. In a moment, the pressure was gone. Kat and the others were able to stand and move normally again. Archie was on his knees, breathing heavily. "Beat it before I change my mind," Luke said coldly, looking at Archie. He had enough of putting up with bullies at his normie school. Now he could use his powers to put them in their place. Although to an observer he looked like the bully. Archie was helped to his feet by his friends, and they began to walk as fast as they could away from Luke. They all remembered that the person in front of them had murdered an outcast last year, so they had no more battle spirit. "See you later, Gia, Erica," said Riley under her breath, glaring hatefully at the two girls. She wouldn't let this go. They wouldn't have Luke's help at all times. Both girls put on an ugly expression. They would never be able to defeat Riley, let alone if he had the support of her friends. "Oh, that's a threat?" asked Luke, raising an eyebrow. The pressure around Riley suddenly increased, within seconds. She was on her knees, struggling to keep from being crushed to the floor. "If I ever found out you tried anything against Gia or her friend, I won't let it go," said Luke, increasing the pressure. He'd had enough of breaking up with Enid because of the Spellmans. At least he would defend Gia from these idiots. Why was he doing this when he had only known her for a few days? Because he could, and he wanted to. Sweeping the floor with them wasn't hard for him, and he had taken an interest in Gia. At least he would help her with her bullies. "Is he defending me?" thought Gia with flushed cheeks. "What's going on here?" asked a professor rushing towards Luke's table. Luke deactivated the pressure on Riley, allowing her to breathe normally. "If you have a problem with her, just tell me, okay?" said Luke, looking at Gia pointedly. "Yes," replied Gia, blushing, looking at Luke shyly. "See you later," said Luke, standing up. He had already lost his appetite and didn't feel like explaining to the professor what had happened. In a few seconds, he disappeared from the cafeteria. Several days have passed since Luke met Gia. Their relationship has improved these days. He finally met a girl he could watch a movie with, focusing on the damn movie. Gia had similar tastes to him in video games and series. She could be considered an otaku. Their conversations were much more interesting and fun than with the other girls he'd been with this past while. Also, they hadn't had sex, just a few kisses. Luke's opinion of Gia grew. She wasn't an easy girl. The first time she went to his room, she didn't sleep with him. Moving on to other issues more important than their current relationship. 2 murders occurred in Jericho. One of the victims was a normie high school girl from Jericho. She was found murdered and mutilated in the vicinity of the forest. The other victim was an elderly man well known to all Jericho neighbors. He always took a night walk. He was found mutilated on one of the paths. This could mean that the crazy Professor Normie has already set in motion the plan to revive Crackstone using the hide, or it is the Spellmans who sent some crazy creature or person to murder him. It wouldn't be very smart for him to murder people, as he would be tipping Luke off when he arrived in Jericho. So Luke believes that the first option is the most viable. Because of the butterfly effect, he provoked the events of the series were happening before their time, although he didn't care much about it. He didn't consider the series a good reference, because of the differences in powers and stuff. Luke wanted to read Professor Normie's mind, but he didn't do it. Some artifacts protect your mind. In a school with psychics who have such powers, the school could have given Normie ways to protect herself, or she could have artifacts since her mortal enemies are the outcasts, and she should know their powers. Another event that followed in the footsteps of the Netflix series was the assassination attempt on Wednesday. Luke learned of this from Xavier, who witnessed by chance how a gargoyle fell from the sky straight at Wednesday's head. The difference was that here, Xavier had no time to intervene, as Wednesday destroyed the gargoyle without difficulty. With this, Luke was able to confirm that Rowan is still trying to assassinate Wednesday because of the prophecy which seems to remain unchanged. However, if he wants to assassinate Wednesday, he will have to come up with a very meticulous plan, as Wednesday swept the floor with him in the fight they had on Raven Island. With this, he could also confirm that Rowan had already joined the Nightshade Society. In this way, he found the prophetic drawing left by his mother when she was a student. It was strange that an unpopular person like Rowan could join the Nightshade Society, but it could be explained that he joined because of his family background. Since his mother was an old member of the Nightshade Society and a famous outcast, he was able to get in. Gia entered the Ravenloft dormitory, the dormitory Luke belonged to. Girls were not prohibited from entering male dorms as long as it was during normal hours. Several students recognized her as Luke's current girlfriend, so they greeted her respectfully. Although they had not yet made their relationship official, Gia had already come to Luke's dorm several times. I still can't get used to it, thought Gia, nodding to the students. She looked like she was a mobster, and everyone greeted her with respect. This was because all the students in the Ravenloft dorm had great respect for Luke. Since he humiliated the students in other dorms and the Poe Cup, even though it was canceled, they had come to Raven Island first, and he killed one of the culprits of the attack. He was like a symbol of power and pride for the students of Ravenloft, especially for the students in the same year as Luke and a year younger. Unbeknownst to Luke, his prestige had increased compared to last year when he was rude to everyone and no one liked him, although from his perspective not much had changed. Gia walked until she was in front of the door that led to Luke's dorm room. She knocked softly twice and waited. "Come in," someone said after a few seconds. Gia walked in and noticed two people in the bedroom. Luke's only two friends are Xavier and Ajax. "Hi, Xavier, Ajax. Where's Luke? He's not answering my messages," Gia greeted and asked as she noticed Luke wasn't in the room. "Oh, hi, Gia," replied Xavier, pausing the video game he was playing next to Ajax, who nodded his head in greeting. "If he's not answering your messages, he's most likely training. He puts his cell phone on silent," added Xavier. Xavier remembered the intense training Luke does every day and felt a shiver run down his spine. Since he came back from vacation, he not only trains his telekinesis, he also does weights and martial arts. Once he wanted to join him in training. A big mistake on his part. The next day, he felt all his bones and muscles sore, and he found it hard to walk and climb simple steps, despite his outcast physique. "Which gym?" asked Gia. "At the secondary," replied Xavier. "Thanks, see ya," said Gia, waving goodbye and leaving the room. "So those are the girls Luke likes. Hard to believe," commented Ajax after a few seconds. "What do you mean?" asked Xavier. "That he likes girls with a cheerful and enthusiastic nature. With the hottest senior girls, he barely dated once," explained Ajax's point. "It's true, Gia has several similarities to Enid," said Xavier. Both girls had that optimistic and cheerful aura about them. They pranced around happily as they walked and were very talkative. "That's what I'm talking about. The last thing I thought was that Luke liked those kind of girls. I was picturing more of a, I don't know, a Wednesday Addams," Ajax said, after thinking about which girl might click better with Luke's personality. Wednesday Addams? That girl has a worse personality than Luke, said Xavier with a strange look on his face. Although he found Wednesday very attractive, her personality was very bad. Everyone who wanted to talk to her left in a panic in less than 5 minutes. Her tongue was biting and acidic. She did not hold back in her comments and seemed to see everyone as annoying flies. Since Nevermore began, Wednesday became an outcast. Being an outcast at an outcast school was a difficult feat to accomplish. Worse, don't you remember Luke at the beginning of last year? Asked Ajax. That's right, said Xavier, unable to argue. Luke last year was just as rude as Wednesday was now. He saw everyone as an annoyance and didn't want to talk to anyone. Thanks to Enid, he managed to open up more and stop being so grumpy. Speaking of something else, are you going to the Harvest Festival? You could invite Sarah. She's been interested in you for a while now, asked Xavier. It's mandatory. Everyone has to go. The principal takes normie events very seriously, so we improve the image they have of us, said Ajax with a grimace. Then invite Sarah, suggested Xavier. To forget the trauma of Sabrina, his deceased girlfriend, he could start dating Sarah, a siren friend of Bianca's. I don't know. Maybe, said Ajax, not wanting to talk about it anymore. He resumed the game and they continued where they left off. Gia walked into the secondary gym, which usually no one was using at this time of day, and saw a scene that left her speechless. Luke was in the center, and around him, more than 25 kg discs were orbiting. The discs were moving at a moderate pace around him, as if he were a planet. Whoa, in all those discs, there must be more than a ton, right? Thought Gia in amazement. Her gaze focused on Luke, specifically on his bare chest and abdomen. It seemed that because of the training, he decided to take off his t-shirt. Luke, noticing Gia's arrival, had all the discs neatly back in place within seconds. At this rate, he would need to buy more discs from Larissa. Hey Gia, looking for me? Asked Luke, walking towards her. Luke, said Gia, running and jumping towards Luke to hug him. You need to control your strength a little more. Werewolf strength is no joke, said Luke with a slight smile, catching Gia. With your strength, no problem, said Gia with a little smile, and she started to kiss Luke. That's not what this is about, Luke thought. No matter how much he trains his muscles and strength, he will never reach the physical strength of a werewolf, even if she is a half-normie, half-werewolf. He can beat her with his telekinesis by directing it into his arms. It's like an enhancer, but he doesn't win at our base physics. If this is a dream, I don't want to be woken up, thought Gia, increasing the intensity of the kisses. Never in her best dreams would she imagine she could be in a relationship with Luke Poe. A crush is a love that seems impossible, but here she was, kissing Luke like she was his girlfriend, even though they hadn't made it official yet. From being a person, no one remembered her name, to a popular person overnight. I'm all sweaty, said Luke, pulling away from Gia. I don't care, said Gia, wiping off some spit. You have a nice smell. It'll be bad if you get my sweaty smell. Anyway, what were you looking for me? Asked Luke, ending the kissing. Gia pouted, but Luke didn't notice as he was drying his sweat with a towel and drinking water. In 2 days is the Harvest Festival. I was thinking we could go. You and me, said Gia nervously. Oh, the Harvest Festival. It's already that time of year, thought Luke. Fine by me, replied Luke. Anyway, it was mandatory. Although he might not go since Larissa read his mother's letter telling him about the Spellmans, so she wouldn't force him to attend if there was a danger of him being attacked. Natasha is still looking for the whereabouts of the clues. I have to research the events of the series, Luke thought. Great, it'll be our first date outside of Nevermore, said Gia with a big smile. After hearing what she said, she put on a startled expression and looked at Luke. What's with that face? Asked Luke in confusion. It's a date, right? I mean, if you don't mind, asked Gia, playing with the fingers of her hand. Why all the fuss over a date? Wondered Luke internally. They already gave each other countless kisses, and Gia spent a lot of time in his bedroom. Just recently, on Halloween, the two of them had a movie marathon, staying awake and sleeping together, even though there was no sex. Yeah, sure. I'm going to go take a bath now. Do you want to join me? Asked Luke with a slight smile. Gia's cheeks turned red as tomatoes. And no, thanks. Talk to you later, bye, said Gia, stuttering and leaving the gym quickly. How cute, thought Luke. You've become quite the Don Juan, commented Edgar with a smirk. As Luke's trainer, he was always present at his workouts and had witnessed the whole scene. A year ago, it would have been impossible for Luke to interact this way with a girl, but he has improved since summer vacation. Shut up, Luke said with a grimace. He forgot that Edgar was there. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made that embarrassing comment. You could say it was very normy of him. There's a killer on the loose at the Harvest Festival again. Still, will you go? Asked Edgar. If Luke wants to go, he won't forbid it. If an assassin attacks him better, he can become stronger through battle. He never trusted the strength of one of his descendants that much. I will go. That way they'll poke their heads out, Luke replied. He knew it wasn't about the Spellman, though. This was about Hyde being controlled by a normie. Although the Spellmans might try to assassinate him again, like last year, if so this time, he will get evidence so the fuckers won't get away with it. In last year's Poe Cup attack, the Spellmans crossed the line. They committed a terrorist attack on a school full of outcasts. However, as Luke had no tangible evidence, his story was just that, just a story. Luke had told the police officer about Sabrina and that she was a Spellman, but the officer could do nothing as there was no evidence. He even told him a piece of information that puzzled Luke. According to the cop, the Spellmans did not have a daughter named Sabrina Spellman, who possessed two auras, red and orange. If Sabrina returns to Nevermore with her henchmen, Luke this time will get proof, so make sure the lying bitch can't get away with a teleporter. Rowan will carry out his second assassination attempt on Wednesday, and that same night he will die at the hands of the Hyde. That's if everything happens like in the series Luke thought without much confidence in this. If Rowan tries to confront Wednesday to assassinate her, Wednesday may end up assassinating him. Luke realized that this Wednesday is much stronger and colder than the one in the series. If someone tries to assassinate her, she will not hesitate. As Wednesday's group mate, he is the person she socializes with the most, and that's saying something. They barely converse. The goth girl has very few words, but when she speaks, be prepared for what she's going to say because she doesn't waste her breath saying stupid things. Luke noted that Wednesday is a full-fledged loner. Everyone is afraid to approach her, as if her gaze could murder you. Luke barely talks to her in the group they have in Psychic Powers II. I can try to save Rowan from Hyde or Wednesday, Luke thought. He wasn't doing it because he liked his psychic classmate. He was doing it so the crazy normie wouldn't have limbs for the ritual to revive Crackstone. Besides, if another Nevermore student dies, it will put the school in a tough spot, and Luke gets along well with Larissa. He knows all the effort she puts in for the school and the outcasts. He can make some effort to keep Rowan from being killed. The day of the Harvest Festival is here. Today is the first day of the 2 total days. How do I look? Asked Gia, who had done her hair and makeup. Perfect. I'm sure Luke will be charmed, said Erica, giving a thumbs up. Today would be the first Harvest Festival that the two of them would not spend alone. She implored her friend to accompany her and Luke, and they ended up agreeing. I hope Luke's friends are handsome, Erica said. The main problem for her was their age. She didn't like boys younger than her, even if it was only 2 years. Xavier has a girlfriend, and Ajax seems to be starting to date a girl, said Gia. This she knew, thanks to Luke. Alone again. Well, if nothing else, I'll be with popular, though more boys than me, thought Erica, feeling depressed. Why the worried look on your face? I should be worried, not you, said Erica, looking at Gia, who was playing with her hands and had a lost look on her face. I was thinking if I should ask Luke to go out with me, said Gia, unsure. Go out with you? You're already dadding, Erica said, not understanding her friend. Not dadding like that. Dadding, you know, said Gia, and somehow Erica understood what she meant. Oh, you talk about making their relationship official. Well, you two had already been kissing for over a month, and you were going to his room. Yet you can't do it yourself. That's a man's duty, said Erica, pointing her finger at Gia. It's the year 2021, said Gia. It doesn't matter. You can't do it yourself. You'll look desperate. I know you're afraid of another girl catching his interest, but you have to hang in there. What you can do is that, said Erica, lowering her tone on the last sentence. That, asked Erica. You know, sex, said Erica in a low tone. Of course not. We have to be boyfriend and girlfriend first. My first time can't be that unromantic, said Gia indignantly and a little embarrassed. Even though she liked Luke, she didn't want to have her first time with a guy she'd known for less than 3 months. How innocent you are. Do you think when Kat did it with him, she knew him inside out? They most likely met that same night, Erica said with a dismissive smile. If you take that long, he'll lose interest in you. You know how guys think, especially popular guys like him, Erica pressed. Don't say that. Luke's not like that. He wanted to do it before, but I stopped him, and he didn't get mad, Gia said, a little unsure. Her friend's words had swayed her a little. As Gia spent time in Luke's room, they were alone, and Gia did like making out, so Luke wanted to take it to the next level. His last relationships with girls were like this, kissing and then sex. Indeed, an amazing self-control, thought Erica. From what Gia was telling her, she knew how clingy her friend was and that she was making out with Luke. That a man with rumors of womanizing could control himself and not send Gia to hell for not wanting to be respectable. Well, do what you want. If you trust him, do it. You know him better than I do. Come on, we don't want the bug to go away, said Erica, taking Gia by the arm and walking out of the bedroom. That doesn't help at all, complained Gia internally as she was dragged away by Erica. She was now very undecided on how to act with Luke. What she didn't know was that this night would not go the way she expected it to. Luke was once again at the Harvest Festival. Twinkling lights and vibrant colors filled every part of the festival. The same Ferris wheel as last year stood majestically. There were some new food and game booths. This time, Luke came with a different bride, as unbelievable as it sounds. Although it's not quite right to call Gia a girlfriend. There are more stalls than last year, said Gia excitedly, looking around. She didn't know which stall to visit first. Just smelling the delicious food already made her hungry. Yeah, said Luke, who was turning his head in search of something else, not food. He was looking for Wednesday. The festival was mandatory. She had to be somewhere. The difference with the series is that she has freedom of movement, as Principal Weems doesn't guard her as a troubled student, although she does. But she doesn't go so far as to try to murder normies like in the series, or maybe she did. Will Wednesday try to escape Jericho? Thought Luke doubtfully. He didn't know what the goth girl, who always had the same expression on her face, was thinking. Since she doesn't have to go to therapy with the normie and is not watched by Weems, she could have escaped long ago, but that doesn't seem to be her goal. He was also trying to look for Rowan and Tyler, but among so many people it was impossible to find them. If he extends his domain, he could find Rowan, as he knows of his presence, but for the moment, he must spend the night with his friends and Gia. Where are the others? Erica asked Luke. Xavier went to find his girlfriend. I have already sent them our location. They won't be long, Luke replied, sitting down on a bench. You seem distracted. What's on your mind? Asked Gia, sitting down next to Luke. Avoiding a murder, thought Luke. He couldn't answer that. On how pretty you look today, replied Luke, taking Gia by the waist and bringing his face close to hers. Hee, thanks. I got all dressed up for you, said Gia, blushing and bringing her lips close to Luke's. Damn clingy couple, thought Erica. Luckily, at that moment, Xavier and the others arrived. Sorry, I'm late, Luke, said Xavier, walking towards his friend, who was always ranting if he had to wait. His friend was not identified as someone who was patient. Besides Xavier, there were Bianca, Ajax, Davina, Yoko, Kent, Davina's twin brother, and a girl whose name Luke didn't know. He only knew she was from the group of sirens following Bianca and Enid. Luke, upon seeing Enid, instantly pulled away from Gia and stood up. "Hey, everyone," Luke said, greeting the group with a strange look on his face. It had been a long time since he had hung out with Bianca, Davina, Yoko, and Enid. His gaze met Enid's. "I hope you didn't mind the tardiness. If Xavier knew how to read the cell phone location properly, we would have been here 5 minutes ago," Bianca said with annoyance. "It's not my fault. The internet here stinks," Xavier said with a scowl, and the two started arguing as usual. The others seemed to be used to it and left them. "They are?" asked Kent, looking at Erica and Gia behind Luke. "Oh yes, this is Erica and Gia. My friends," said Luke, starting to introduce everyone in the group. "Friend," thought Gia. "Let's get going. I'm starving," said Kent, starting to push Xavier and Bianca, who, despite that, were still fighting. The group started moving around, visiting different fast food stands and games while chatting and laughing. "Be careful with the blonde girl dressed in pink. She's Luke's ex-girlfriend," commented Erica in a low tone, approaching Gia. Luke was talking about video games with Ajax, and every so often he would slyly glance at Enid. Enid did the same. "Yeah, I know," said Gia with an unsure expression. She had noticed how Luke was looking at his ex-girlfriend. "Don't be insecure. Just stick to him and show dominance," said Erica, pulling Gia towards Luke. "What's wrong?" asked Luke, seeing Gia hugging his arm. He felt something spongy on his arm. "I want to try that," said Gia, pointing her finger at a game stand. It was the first thing that came to her mind. "Okay, let's go," said Luke, walking toward the stand. It was a balloon-popping booth. Then it was different games, until they came to one where the targets were moving ducklings, each with a different score. There were smaller, faster ducks that scored more points than the larger, slower ducks. With a toy rifle, you had to shoot them. "Look at the best prizes," said Gia, seeing 3 huge stuffed animals. They were a unicorn, a cute, giant-sized kitten, and a cute elephant. These were much better than the prizes in the other booths. "Can you win it for me? I suck at shooting. You go to the archery club," asked Gia, clasping her hands together and making a puppy dog face. "Yeah, leave it to me," nodded Luke. "Although the last time I gave one of those stuffed animals as a gift, the person died," he added in a low tone, remembering Sabrina. Although she hadn't died in a real way, she only faked her death, but a doppelganger of her did die in a real way. "Following that logic, I would have to make several gifts out of these stuffed animals," said a cold, monotone voice. Luke turned his head and noticed a girl with 2 black braids, pale skin, and a blank expression. She held a rifle in one hand and was firing with impeccable accuracy. Her clothing was a black jacket that she wore unzipped underneath a t-shirt with black and white lines. "Wednesday," thought Luke in surprise. He hadn't even noticed her. With so many people, Wednesday's presence was harder to notice with his domain. The girl did look like a ghost. "The chances of them dying will be low. You could experiment or eliminate them on your own," Luke commented, paying to try to win the prize. "If I could do it, I would have done it already. After I assassinate them, I have a lot of annoying things to take care of," said Wednesday with a grimace. She shot, and the bullet hit right in the duckling's head. "That's the first time I've seen her make a disapproving expression," thought Luke. Most likely, Wednesday wants to murder normies. The bullying normies that were annoying her and her brother. Again, the norms of normie society saved those people. The same thing happened to Luke with the bullies at his normie school. Many times, he thought about killing them, but he didn't do it because of all the trouble he would have to face. Plus, he didn't know what world he was in, and he didn't want to be captured for experiments like he was a mutant or something. "Eliminated, murdered. Are they talking about the ducklings?" thought Gia, looking at Luke and Wednesday, who were holding 2 toy rifles that looked very real. "Perfect score," said the stall man in disbelief that this gothic girl hadn't missed a bullet and only aimed at the hardest targets. "What prizes do you want, girl?" asked the stall owner, pointing to the 3 large stuffed animals. "Don't you have something like a scorpion or a spider?" asked Wednesday, looking at the stuffed animals in disgust. "What do you say? A stuffed animal of a scorpion," said the man, looking strangely at the goth girl. "You must be from that school for weirdos," he added, looking at her more cautiously. "If you mean nevermore, yes, I'm from there. Keep the stuffed animal. I'll give it to you," said Wednesday, leaving the rifle on the table and leaving the place. She already had the first subject of her experiment. If this man died, giving away giant stuffed animals could be a harbinger of death. "Your turn, kid," said the man, shaking his head. Luke, who started shooting. He had to finish quickly and follow Wednesday. His aim had improved, but it was not up to Wednesday's level. He could only reach her if he used his telekinesis to maneuver the bullets. Minutes later, his turn was over. He scored enough for one of the 3 plushies Gia wanted. "You choose. I have to go to the bathroom," Luke said, leaving Gia at the stall with a confused expression. He widened his domain and began to look for Wednesday's presence. Among so many people, it was difficult, but he found her after a few minutes. The girl was already away from the fair. She seemed to be heading into the forest, following another person Luke recognized. It was Rowan. "Luckily, I'll make it in time," Luke thought, starting to run in Wednesday's direction. "Hey, Luke, where are you going?" asked Xavier, stepping into Luke's path, who almost collided with him. Luckily, he managed to stop. "No time to explain. Follow me," Luke said impatiently as he dodged him and started running again. "What's the rush?" asked Xavier, following Luke. "Don't you want to ask me why I'm alone? I've had enough of Bianca's incessant complaining," he added angrily. "You'll tell me later. Now follow me," Luke said. They walked deeper into the forest until Luke stopped and hid behind a large tree. "What exactly are we doing?" asked Xavier. "SHH, look," said Luke, pointing in a specific direction. Xavier looked and noticed 2 familiar people, Rowan and Wednesday. They seemed to be having a conversation in the dark of the forest. "Why did you guys come here?" asked Enid, who had followed them. Seeing 2 of your classmates running was a strange thing, especially if it was Luke. Besides, she was bored. Bianca was in a very bad mood. Yoko and Davina seemed to be on a date. Kent was getting along very well with the girl named Erica. Lastly, Ajax was improving his relationship with Sarah. "Enid, come closer and watch," Luke said, waving his hand. Enid curiously approached Luke and watched her roommate talking to a bespectacled boy she recognized but hadn't seen much of. "What's wrong with Rowan? He looks deranged," Xavier commented. Rowan's appearance had badly deteriorated. "I don't know. Let's try to listen," Luke said, sharpening his hearing. "I don't have time to explain, but you're in danger," said Wednesday in a serious tone to Rowan. Usually, she wouldn't worry about a person's well-being, but she had just had a vision of Rowan dying horribly. At this comment, Rowan only laughed, puzzling Wednesday. "Why is he laughing?" asked Enid in disgust. It gave a very bad feeling to Rowan's laugh, and his face seemed to have aged these last few days. "You got it backward. You're in danger," exclaimed Rowan, reaching out his hand and wanting to immobilize Wednesday with his telekinesis. However, Wednesday vanished into the shadow before she could be immobilized and appeared elsewhere. "What are you doing?" asked Wednesday, confused and at the same time in an icy tone. "I save everyone from you. I must kill you," said Rowan with an increasingly unhinged expression. With both hands using them as a focus, he pointed at a tree, which, in a few breaths, pulled it from its roots and floated. "He's gone crazy?" asked Enid in exultation. The ears of the outcasts were superior to those of the normies. Despite the distance, the 3 could hear what Rowan said. "Looks like he improved his strength," thought Luke, not very impressed. A tree weighed about 300 to 400 kg, but looking at Rowan's exhausted face, it seemed that was his limit. "So it was you who tried to assassinate me with the gargoyle. A lazy assassination attempt. You should try harder," said Wednesday, not scared at all. "Shut up," shouted Rowan, throwing the tree at full speed to crush Wednesday. If that tree hit Wednesday at that speed, it would make mincemeat out of her. However, Wednesday didn't move. Dark energy began to swirl in her hand. Quickly, that dark energy took shape, solidifying into an all-black scythe that emitted a gloomy, icy aura. Wednesday made a slashing motion, and the scythe cut through the tree as if it were tofu. Before Rowan could panic, the girl appeared very close to him, moving through the shadows. Holy shit, thought Rowan, creating a barrier around his entire body. Wednesday hit the barrier with her scythe. On the third hit, she destroyed it completely, and Rowan was exhausted. He wanted to give all his strength to that barrier, but it didn't hold 5 hits. This is bad, thought Rowan with fear, seeing Wednesday's pale face that in the darkness stood out more. Her dark eyes, which looked like the abyss, looked at him without emotion. Rowan looked at the ground in terror. Dark hands came out of the ground and began to imprison him. They looked like the very hands of hell. His whole body was covered with these, and he could no longer move. Rowan's eyes were also covered, and he could see nothing. Wednesday knew he could activate his telekinesis with his eyes, as he was one of the focus. You put up a better fight than last time. It's still disappointing, though. Before you talk about killing me, you should get stronger, Wednesday said in an icy, unchanged tone. The only thing that confused her was her vision. Would she be the one to kill Rowan? She planned to kill him, but not in such a horrible way. She would behead him. She wouldn't torture him. She didn't have time for that. Will she kill him? Asked Enid, looking at Wednesday, who was aiming at Rowan's neck with her dark scythe. Most likely, yes, Luke replied without hesitation. I know that's her right, but maybe it's too much. She could hand him over, Xavier said, though he had no plans to intervene. Since Wednesday defeated him handily, she could be merciful and just turn him over to the outcast police. Why do you guys take it so easily? Asked Enid with a frightened look on her face. She didn't want to witness another murder. Such is the way of the outcast society. You're very kind, Enid, replied Luke, looking at Enid. It's weird that you understand it so well when you lived in a normie orphanage, commented Xavier. However, Luke didn't hear him. Enid and he were staring at each other. Is it bad that I'm nice? Asked Enid, staring at Luke. Of course not. It's just that being so nice would put you in difficult situations if you run into people who want to murder you, replied Luke. Is that why you left me? Why were you afraid to put yourself in difficult situations because of me? Asked Enid. She knew about the grudge between the Spellman family and the Poe family. Her werewolf family was among the most important in America's outcast society. Luke didn't know what to say. Luckily, Xavier intervened at that moment. Look, Rowan is showing her something, he said, and they both stopped their chatter. The girl in the drawing is you. My mother drew that picture 25 years ago when she was a student at Nevermore, explained Rowan, who was on his knees, unable to see anything. Wednesday held up a drawing showing a girl who looked like her behind her, a burning and shattered stage. You want to murder me over a simple drawing? That's new, commented Wednesday with a raised eyebrow. My mother was a powerful seer. She told me before she died that you would be the cause of the destruction in Nevermore, Rowan said angrily, but unable to break free. There's someone else here. Who would that be? Asked Wednesday without giving Rowan's tantrum a second thought. Behind the supposed girl who was her was a tall boy with almost blonde, brown hair sitting on a shattered column. Luke Poe, replied Rowan. Me, thought Luke in surprise. He didn't know he would enter the prophecy. Why didn't you try to assassinate Luke Poe? Do you think I'm weaker than him? Asked Wednesday in a more icy tone. She pressed the scythe harder into Rowan's neck. As Wednesday was about to decapitate Rowan, a deafening roar was heard in the place. Out of the dark forest jumped a grotesque and horrible creature. The creature had a muscular body with dark gray skin, which looked wrinkled and taut over its bones and muscles. Its posture is crouched, with a hunched back. The head is large in comparison to the body, with a face that has human features but is extremely deformed. The eyes are large, round, and bright red, standing out aggressively on its face. The mouth is wide and full of sharp, uneven teeth. On the top of his head, he has a sparse amount of brown, messy hair. Its arms are long and end in huge hands, with elongated fingers ending in sharp, pointed claws. Luke recognized the creature immediately. a hide that exuded a very high murderous intent. The hide leaped toward Rowan, pointing its sharp claws. Wednesday, recognizing the threat, faded into her own shadow. "What's going on?" asked Rowan, but just then he felt an excruciating pain in his back, sharp claws tearing at his skin. Luckily, before the claws tore him further, he was moved by an invisible force at an incredible speed. Rowan, who no longer had shadows covering his eyes, looked up, recognizing Luke, who had taken a step and was looking at the hide with a slight smile. "Luke, why did you save me?" asked Rowan with pain all over his back. "If Wednesday wants to murder you, I'll allow it. That's her right. However, I can't let an unknown hide murder a fellow student at Nevermore," replied Luke. Rowan, before he could say anything, passed out from the pain and blood loss. Plus, he was already exhausted from all the power he used earlier. "He's losing a lot of blood. He needs to be attended to immediately," said Enid, approaching Rowan and doing a quick check. "We have a small problem," said Xavier, looking at the hide, who was roaring furiously at not being able to slay his prey. Enid looked up at the monster. It was ugly and scary, but looking at Luke's back, she felt a lot of reassurance. She was not afraid. She felt safe if Luke was with her, a feeling she longed for. "Since when are they watching?" thought Wednesday, looking sideways at Luke and the other two. Then she looked at the monster that lunged furiously at Luke. "A teenage hide, a perfect opponent to hone your skills," said Edgar, who hovered near Luke. Edgar, as Luke's teacher, knew that what he needed most was experience in battles to the death. He had had some, but it wasn't enough. Luke generated crushing pressure around Hyde. Hundreds of kilograms were crushing him, trying to break him, but he continued his onslaught. His speed slowed just a little. "This is serious," thought Luke. He had Enid, Xavier, and a dying Rowan behind him. To lessen the danger to them, he took a step forward towards the hide. On his arm, he concentrated and created bands of telekinetic energy that led to his fist. First, he waited for the hide to attack him. His speed was superhuman, the fastest speed he had ever faced. However, his observation haki allowed him to dodge the monster's claws by inches, which left a trail of cutting and dangerous air. Without missing a beat, Luke threw his fist forward, aiming it at the monster's face. Upon impact, bands of telekinetic energy are released with explosive force. The monster's face deforms from the blow, and in the blink of an eye, it is thrown backward like a rag doll, flying through the air and landing with a thunderous crunch several feet away. 3 trees shattered, thought Luke in awe of the power of his fist. This time he didn't hold back and struck with all his might. Hyde stood up again in a short time. His face was mangled. He lost some teeth and his nose was broken. Even his head seemed somewhat caved in. However, it glared even more furiously at Luke. He roared louder than before and went back on the attack again. "Superhuman regeneration," Luke muttered with a grimace. Edgar had explained Hyde's powers to him. They were broken. If he suffered that damage, he would no longer be able to get up. The price of those powers is to be a horrible, uncontrolled monster. Luke didn't try to immobilize the hide. He knew it was useless. He didn't have what it took to hold him still. His strength was too much. He controlled the tree that split Wednesday in half and sent it flying at the monster from different places. One log from the front and another from the back. He increased the speed of the logs, making them more powerful on impact and harder to evade or attack. The hide used its claws to destroy the log from the front. His claws were left in bad shape and bleeding. It was no joke that more than 300 kg are coming at you at a high speed. In defending himself from the first log, he was left defenseless with the other log impacting his back. Luke thought it would go through him, but it did not. The hide's grayish skin seemed very tough. The hide grunted in pain, but did not suffer a serious wound. Hyde turned around and grabbed the log on his back with his hands. At that precise moment, Wednesday emerged from the shadows near him. In her left hand, she wielded her dark scythe. With incredible speed, Wednesday swung her scythe at Hyde's face, aiming for his huge, ugly red eyes. The height of the two was uneven, but the scythe released waves of dark energy that reached Hyde's eyes and cut them. "Arr," the Hyde roared in pain. The eyes were a sensitive area. His roar was one of pain and fury. Unable to see, he began to wave his long arms to all sides. Wednesday vanished and appeared away from him. Luke knew he had to take advantage of this opportunity. The Hyde's eyes would recover in a short time. Before that, he must do more damage to him. 2 trees behind Luke broke loose from their roots and floated within seconds. Luke's speed in getting 2 trees out of the ground was much faster than in the past. The trees headed upwards towards the Hyde. After that, 1 tree came down at high speed until it hit Hyde's head. Immediately, the other tree came down and hit the Hyde again. He used the trees as hammers. 2 blows, 3 blows, 5 blows. The trees took turns smashing the Hyde. A cloud of dirt and dust rose. Only the sound of the collision between the trees and the hard skin of the Hyde could be heard. After dozens of blows, the trees broke in half. The Hyde's skin was tougher than Luke had imagined. Yet he had pounded it mercilessly. Its grunts had ceased. "I kept my promise," Luke thought, remembering that the first time he came to Jericho, he thought about crushing Tyler if he found him turned into Hyde. With a slashing motion, he created a gust of wind with his telekinetic waves, dissipating the cloud of dirt and dust that had been made. Luke and Wednesday approached the pit that was created by the tree attacks. The Hyde was lying in the center. Luke was reminded of Yamcha from Dragon Ball. "He's regenerating rapidly," Luke commented, seeing how the wounds he and Wednesday caused were healing. "Then we should pound him some more, until he stops healing," said Wednesday in her usual tone. Within seconds, the Hyde stood up and glared at them both in fury. His ugly red eyes had already recovered. He roared louder than before and jumped at them again. As he was about to hit them, both Luke and Wednesday created their respective shields. A telekinetic shield and a darkness shield. Both shields joined together and created a stronger one. The Hyde hit the joint shield with his huge claw and failed to destroy it despite screaming with more anger. In a second, it was repelled and sent away from them. Without another word, Luke and Wednesday began to attack Hyde. Their movements were well executed and did not get in each other's way. Wednesday was in charge of attacking stealthily. Her attacks were very lethal, as she waited for the right moment to do damage with her dark scythe. Luke was in close combat with the Hyde. His observation of Haki allowed him to react to the beast's quick attacks and dodge them perfectly. He managed to dodge it thanks to the telekinetic waves he created to push himself, as his base physique could not compare to that of Hyde. He had to be very precise, but he did not miss. When Wednesday attacked, Luke took advantage and used dozens of stones to bombard Hyde. Between the two of them, they began to beat up the Hyde. His healing abilities were getting worse and worse, and his ferocity was diminishing. "I don't know who the monsters are," commented Xavier, watching as Luke and Wednesday beat the crap out of the Hyde, who looked confused. He'd never been beaten up so one-sidedly. He had already killed several people, and no one was a challenge. "The two of them do good teamwork," Enid muttered, clenching her fists tightly to the point that she hurt her palms and blood came out. If she controlled her powers better, she could help Luke and not be a useless side-eye. "Looks like they don't need our help," said Xavier, crossing his arms. Not much he could do. His whip could be of use in battle, but they didn't look like they needed reinforcement. The Hyde was a mess. His healing was no longer working at 100%. One of his eyes was cut and would no longer heal. He had cuts all over him, and Luke had hit him, breaking many bones and causing internal injuries. "What's up, monster? Where's your previous ferocity?" asked Luke, walking towards Hyde while snapping his fingers. On his face was a maniacal grin. He was already savoring the last blow that would break the beast's skull. He would no longer be able to heal as before. "You put up more of a fight than Rowan. Your head will make a nice decoration in my room," said Wednesday, walking towards the Hyde. She held the scythe, and with her pale face, she looked like the grim Reaper himself. She was already savoring the moment when the monster's head separated from his body. She had done well to come to Nevermore. Luke and Wednesday looked at each other sideways. This would be a competition. The first one to get to the hide and give him the final blow would win. Just then out of a bush came several people. "What's going on here?" asked a girl they all recognized. It was Bianca. Besides her came Gia, Erica, Davina, Yoko, and Kent. The bad thing was that they had come out of a bush near the hide, who was watching them with his only functional eye. With his last strength, the hide jumped towards the new group of people. They were not as scary as those two. The strength of these new people didn't seem like a big deal to the monster. The hide was advancing at an alarming speed. Its sharp claws extended toward Bianca and the others, who were petrified with fear at the sight of a horrible monster running towards them. "Shit," thought Luke as he sped towards the hide. He noticed that the ugly beast was looking with one eye at Gia as it was closer than the others. Wednesday, who was about to follow the hide, noticed how Luke moved at a much faster speed than before. "His feet don't touch the ground," thought Wednesday, stopping instead. Luke was flying at great speed and caught up with the hide in a few seconds. He spun in midair and directed the heel of his foot toward the back of the moving monster's neck. Boom! The sound of the blow echoed like a cannon shot. Luke increased his strength in the blow with his telekinesis. The method was the same as on his fist, but on his foot. His foot connected with great force, burying the monster in the ground. The impact created a large cloud of dust and debris, which rose in a thick blanket around the impact zone, briefly obscuring the view. "Phew, I made it in time. Flying is always faster," thought Luke, sighing in relief. He felt a slight pain in his foot. As the cloud of smoke began to dissipate, Luke could be seen hovering over the newly formed small crater. Gia and the others looked with wide eyes at Luke floating near the crater. "His stamina is respectable," thought Luke, watching as the hide struggled to his feet. So he motioned for Gia and the others to stay away. The battle hadn't lasted long. Only a few minutes, however. The damage done to the hide was high, but here he was getting up. Luke could stay like this all night, as long as he didn't take such dangerous blows as the hide had taken. From in front of Luke came Wednesday, and lowering her gaze, she looked down at the hide, who seemed cornered. The hide opened its mouth, and a deafening roar burst from its throat, a sound so powerful that it vibrated the air around him. The roar wasn't just a scream of fury. It was a sonic shockwave that spread like an invisible explosion. Luke backed up until he was close to Gia, Bianca, Ajax, and the others. With incredible speed, he created a barrier that protected everyone from the roar. The ground shook, the leaves of nearby trees shook violently, and birds fled in disorderly chaos. Wednesday had also stepped back and created a dark shield around her. She did not expect a roar to be so powerful and dangerous. Taking advantage of the confusion, the hide jumped and with incredible agility disappeared into the thick forest. His leap covered more than 10 meters distance, and with his claws, he helped himself to move between the trees. "That's a pity," thought Luke, shaking his head. His barrier dissipated. With his dominance and flight, he could follow the hide and hunt it down, but he wouldn't. It was too much trouble. He didn't think the hide was a threat. Besides, he had to check on Enid's and, of course, Rowan's condition. "It's an impure hide, and its strength is great," thought Luke. He had gained some useful information in this battle. Tyler had a normie father. If both his parents had been hide, his strength would have been greater. Although he controlled the fight, and at no point did he think he might lose or be seriously injured, this hide's regeneration, stamina, and strength were no joke. Besides, it was 2 versus 1. Even though he could defeat him by himself, he didn't even use his blue aura. He could have ordered him to stop and used those seconds to beat him. Even though he is a beast, he still has brains, and mind control works as long as they are simple commands like stop. "What was that monster?" asked Kent, who was still shaking as he remembered the hide's murderous look. "A hide," answered Luke, and everyone was surprised. They knew about this type of outcast, although he could be considered a monster. An outcast who turns into a horrible beast with no way to control his impulses. "Will Enid be okay?" thought Luke worriedly, flying at incredible speed towards Enid. He didn't know what range the hide's roar had. "Luke, wait," said Gia, running towards Luke. The others followed her. Luke, within seconds, arrived at Enid's side. He landed and walked over to her. "Are you okay?" asked Luke, examining Enid. He noticed that in her ears there was a trace of blood. For some unknown reason to him, there was also blood on her palms. "I'm fine. From a distance, the damage wasn't much," replied Enid with a smile, hiding her hands behind her back. "You're bleeding," Luke said, moving closer to her. From one of his pockets, he pulled out a handkerchief and started wiping the blood in Enid's ears. "Damn monster. I'll hit him harder next time," thought Luke as he cleaned Enid. "Thanks," murmured Enid, seeing Luke's face, which was close to her. Before she could do anything stupid, the others came over. "What happened here, Xavier?" asked Bianca in a historical tone. She saw the place destroyed, a horrible monster, and Rowan lying on the ground, unconscious and with a big wound. "Shouldn't you ask me if I'm okay?" asked Xavier with a frown. His ears also had blood in them, as did Enid's, but it was nothing serious. "That's what I asked," said Bianca, raising her tone of voice. "You asked what happened here, not if I'm okay," said Xavier, also raising his voice. "Did I hurt your feelings? I thought I was the girl in this relationship," Bianca said with irritation. "They keep fighting," thought Luke, rolling his eyes. "Stop fighting. Rowan was attacked by that beast. He's losing a lot of blood. He's still alive," said Yoko, bending down and taking Rowan's pulse, who was pale and unconscious. "We must get him to the hospital right away," said Kent. "We won't make it. His wound is serious," said Bianca, putting aside her fight with Xavier. "He's trying to murder Wednesday. I guess it's karma," commented Xavier, shaking his head. "What?" they all asked, surprised and uncomprehending. Xavier told them everything he saw in a nutshell. How Rowan said in his own words that he wanted to assassinate Wednesday and that he had tried before. He didn't tell about the prophecy or why Rowan wanted to assassinate Wednesday specifically. As that prophecy involved his friend, he decided to hide it so as not to give Luke trouble. Wednesday, who was standing silently, watched the dying Rowan. She was weighing on a scale whether to murder him or not. Since he wanted her murdered, it was her right to end the grudge. "What will you do?" asked Luke, and everyone looked at Wednesday. "Finishing off dying people is no fun at all. I'll let him live if he makes it through tonight," Wednesday replied in a monotone. "Fun," thought everyone except Luke. "You can fly, can't you, Luke?" asked Yoko, looking at Luke, who was standing with his arms crossed, looking at Rowan's pale face. They all looked at Luke with incredulous faces. The ability to fly in a telekinetic was advanced. Older Yellow Aura psychics have that ability. For a classmate of his age to be able to fly at that speed was an incredible feat to witness. If he can dig up roots with his telekinesis without seeing them, it makes sense that he can control his own body to fly, thought Wednesday, though she was still amazed at Luke's talent for being able to sense objects and his own body without seeing them. "It's either that or," thought Wednesday, narrowing her eyes as she looked at Luke. "Yes, I can," Luke replied. They had already seen it, and it wasn't something he wanted to hide either. "If you fly Rowan to the hospital, he can be saved. Will you do it?" asked Yoko with a strange expression. "If he saves them from Hyde, he'll try to save Rowan too, right?" "Please, Luke," Enid said in a low tone, grabbing Luke's sleeve with her hand. She didn't want to see another classmate die. Even if Rowan attempted murder on a Wednesday, she no longer cared if he lived or died. At least they could save him and let the outcast justice take care of Rowan. "Fine, I'll do it," Luke replied without much hesitation. Wednesday already said she didn't care if Rowan lived or died. He tried to save Rowan from Hyde so he could take him to the hospital so the idiot in glasses wouldn't die. This way, he would help Larissa and Nevermore, since it's not a good thing for a student to die for a monster. "You're coming too. You're hurt," Luke said, looking at Enid. Rowan started to float up from the ground. "What, me?" asked Enid, pointing a finger at herself. "Yes, sure if you want," said Luke, scratching his cheek. Yes, of course I want to. I'm hurt. My ears hurt, and I have some cuts on my palms," said Enid, showing off her wounds for some reason. Fine, climb on my back, said Luke, turning his back to Enid, who smiled and climbed on Luke, interlocking her arms and gripping him tightly. With Enid on his back and Rowan hovering nearby, he took off at a moderate pace so as not to scare Enid. I hope you're not afraid of heights, commented Luke, flying higher and higher. If it's with you, I'm not afraid of anything, murmured Enid to herself, sinking her head into Luke's neck. What did you say? Asked Luke, who didn't hear because of Enid's low tone and the wind in his face. Nothing, said Enid with a slight smile. The night was clear and beautiful. The half-moon lit the road, and a gentle breeze hit Luke's face as he made his way to the hospital. It would have been a more romantic scene if they didn't have a dying man flying beside them. What a cute couple, Kent said, watching as Luke and Enid drifted farther and farther apart in the sky. Ex-couple, Davina corrected. Ex-couple, thought Wednesday with a raised eyebrow. She's Enid's roommate, an enthusiastic person who always dresses in bright colors. The last thing she would think was that Enid was Luke's girlfriend. From what she knew of Luke, he didn't seem like the kind of person who would put up with such an enthusiastic and happy person. They should get back together. They're cute together, Kent said, and Yoko nudged him as she slyly pointed her head at Gia, who was looking skyward. Luke was waiting in one of the seats at Jericho General Hospital for Enid. As for Rowan, it looked like he might be saved. He was being treated in the emergency room, and Principal Weems had already been called. It would only be a matter of time before she got here, asking what the hell happened. Just then, out of one of the doors came Enid. In her hands, she was wearing bandages, and her ears no longer had traces of blood in them. Are you feeling better? Asked Luke, getting up from his seat. Yes, they were only minor injuries. Don't worry, said Enid without her usual enthusiasm. What's wrong? Why the sad face? Asked Luke. I was useless again, and you had to protect me, said Enid in a depressed tone, looking at the floor. Is she sad about that? Thought Luke. Seeing Enid's sad face, he was about to tell her that it didn't matter. He would protect her as many times as necessary, but he stopped himself. That was the reason he had ended his relationship with her. He was afraid that she would be attacked because of him, and he would not be able to protect her. The words Enid's mother said to him made him think that, if it were up to him, he would never have ended it with Enid. After all, he had fallen in love with Enid. Yes, he had fallen in love. He wasn't in love with Enid at first, but eventually it ended up that way. Even he didn't realize that until he thought about it carefully. In the other girls he was with, he was just looking for a replacement for Enid, but none of them succeeded. It was strange that he ended up falling in love with a girl so different from him, but it gave a different color to his life. I am far inferior compared to Wednesday, said Enid, clenching her fists tightly. She had seen how her roommate fought, and she was strong. Luke kept silent. If he spoke, all the effort he made to keep Enid away from him would be in vain. That won't stay that way, though. Luke, said Enid, suddenly regaining her energy. Yes, asked Luke, surprised by Enid's sudden energy. I'll get stronger, strong enough not to be a burden and fight by your side, said Enid decisively. Fight by my side? Thought Luke. He knew Enid should be aware of the conflict between the Spellmans and the Poe. Her werewolf family was one of the oldest, though she must not think the prestigious Spellman family had demonic dealings. So, saying that is leaving between the lines that she will fight alongside him against the Spellmans regardless of the power of this family, or the opinion of her parents. If I can be strong enough, you must promise me one thing, Enid added, looking Luke in the eye. What thing? Asked Luke, sensing that this conversation was going down a path he couldn't control. You'll tell me the truth about why you left me, and if I believe it's because of what I think, you'll come back to me, said Enid, raising her voice on the last sentence. So, answer me, said Enid, moving closer to Luke to press him. She sure is pushy when she wants to be, thought Luke, nodding the determined look on Enid's face. Fine, I'll do it, but we need to clear up a few things, said Luke, sighing internally. What things? asked Enid with a smile. Already Luke had agreed. Now she just had to train like crazy. "I'll consider you strong enough if you can defeat that Hyde all by yourself," replied Luke, and the smile on Enid's face disappeared. "Isn't that too much?" asked Enid doubtfully. "Where did your confidence go? You're a werewolf, you should be able to defeat that Hyde if you try hard enough," said Luke with a slight smile. In the series, Enid put up a fight against Hyde, but was defeated. She was able to beat him thanks to the intervention of the sheriff who shot Hyde. However, in this world, Luke can confirm that Hyde is much more powerful. Still, Enid should be able to defeat him with enough training. Her lineage is pure and among the oldest of werewolves. If she is disciplined, it is an achievable goal. "I'll do it. I'll crush that ugly monster," said Enid, who was annoyed by Luke's provocation. "That's the attitude," said Luke. Just then, a tall woman with almost white blonde hair walked through the front door of the hospital. "Luke, what happened?" asked Larissa, who had sweat on her face. She had heard that one of her students was in the hospital in an emergency. "You useless piece of shit!" screamed Marilyn hysterically at Tyler, who was imprisoned in the cave. Just a few minutes ago, he had escaped from two people who had seriously injured him, and now he was being tortured by Marilyn. "Sorry, ARGH," cried Tyler in pain as Marilyn shocked him powerfully with a taser. "You just had to assassinate a fucking outcast, and on top of failing you got your ass kicked," said Marilyn, clicking her tongue. If the monster she was handling didn't get her the human body parts she needed, she wouldn't be able to do the ritual to revive her ancestor. Since it was the Harvest Festival, Marilyn thought it was the ideal occasion to assassinate an outcast student or two as they finally left Nevermore. Her target was Luke Poe. She didn't count that he would be so powerful and could defeat Tyler in his Hyde form. "That brat Wednesday is also stronger than I thought. However, that damn Poe is much stronger. He can fly, and he took on Tyler in close combat," thought Marilyn with a frown. Tyler told her about the battle, and from her point of view, Luke was the key and the one who had the most prominence in the fight. His blows were severe, and he didn't need to hide in the shadows waiting to deliver a killing blow. Also, if he could fly, he could have flown and attacked from that distance at Hyde, with objects such as trees, etc. "Easy. It's not your fault, Tyler. Get some sleep. I'll go get a first aid kit to fix you up," said Marilyn in a kind tone, making a 360-degree turn. "Okay, thank you," said Tyler, relieved. His eyelids closed wearily. Today was a very exhausting day. Within seconds, he was sleeping against the cold rock like a baby. Marilyn looked coldly at Tyler again. She hated outcasts, but she depended on this half of Hyde to accomplish her plan. Once she revived Crackstone, she could assassinate him, though she would lose a good puppet. "Although a useful puppet, once I revive Crackstone, I will be able to know the ritual to be just as powerful as him. A Hyde will be nothing," thought Marilyn with a grotesque smile. At that moment, Marilyn heard several footsteps approaching her location. She turned her head and looked at the unwanted guests with alertness. She did not know who these people were wearing black cloaks, and on their faces were masks. "Who are you people?" asked Marilyn cautiously. She reached into her pocket and gripped a syringe tightly. If she injected it into a person, no matter how hard an outcast suffered a lot of pain. There were 5 hooded people. The leader was in the middle. His face was not visible, and he was over 2 meters tall. His build was thin. "Calm down. We came for a chat, Marilyn Thornhill, or rather Laurel Gates," said the tall hooded man. On the outside, Marilyn's expression remained unchanged. However, inside she was very surprised and alarmed. "How do they know my identity?" thought Marilyn, feeling nervous. From the aura she felt from these people, they seemed to be outcasts. The 6-foot-plus man had a suffocating aura about him. "I don't know what you're talking about," said Marilyn, as she thought a mile a minute looking for a way to escape or kill these people using Tyler. Too bad her puppet was in bad shape and recovering energy. "Let's not waste time playing dumb. We know you are a descendant of Joseph Crackstone and that you want to revive him. We are here to help you," said the man in a calm tone. He didn't care if Marilyn tried anything. He could easily defeat her no matter how much she used the half-hide who was sleeping peacefully. "Help me," asked Marilyn. "Yes, as you may have realized, one hide won't be enough to defeat certain outcasts and even genius students. So we will lend you a hand so you can accomplish your plan," replied the hooded man. "How exactly will you help me?" asked Marilyn. "With this," replied the hooded man, pulling out of his sleeve a test tube with a black-colored liquid substance. "You just have to inject it into Hyde. That way his power will increase, and tonight's defeat will not be repeated," he added, shaking the test tube slightly. "Why are they helping me? You must want something in return," said Marilyn, knowing that no one would help you just because in this world. "With the Hyde, you must murder Luke Poe. We know you need body parts for the ritual. Kill Luke Poe and use his body part for the Crackstone revival ritual," replied the hooded man. "So they belong to the Spellmans," thought Marilyn, smiling internally. Now she understood who these people were. As a person who kept to the shadows and her mortal enemies were the outcasts, she gathered a lot of information about them. She managed to learn something of an old grudge between the Spellmans and the Poes that went back over 100 years. The families would not rest until they exterminated each other, and it looked like the Spellmans would win this battle. "Fine, I accept. I'll kill Luke Poe, if that liquid helps me empower my Hyde," Marilyn replied. She wanted to murder the Poe boy anyway. She hated him. In her classes, he was always arrogant and made fun of her. "I hope you keep your word," said the hooded man, throwing the test tube at him. Without another word, he left the cave along with the other 4 who did not speak during the entire talk. "They are safe for now, Spellman. Then they will be the next to die once Crackstone revives," thought Marilyn, examining the tube. She didn't think they had fooled her, so she would use this substance. She knew the Spellmans wanted to murder the Poes, so it made sense that they would give her this in exchange for her murdering Luke. This way, the chances of being blamed for murdering an outcast within an educational institution of outcasts is lower. They will be able to end the grudge of hundreds of years once, and for all, and not let their latest enemy continue to grow stronger. The 5 hooded men, after exiting, the cave began to run through the forest at rapid speed. "Are we seriously going to ask for the help of a normie?" one hooded person asked in disgust. Her tone of voice was sharp and annoyed. Luke would recognize her immediately. Sabrina Spellman, or whatever her name was. "If you had completed the mission Father gave you, we wouldn't be here, but you failed," said another hooded person in a mocking tone. "Shut up. Luke Poe's strength was underestimated. It's not my fault I was given false information," Sabrina said angrily. "Underestimated? Didn't you say it was an easy mission? Father trusted you because of your 2 auras, but you weren't up to the task," said the hooded person, hiding envy. "Stop, both of you," said the tall hooded man before Sabrina exploded and attacked her brother. "Last year Seed died on Raven Island. That was a mistake that can't be made again. Now we're in a difficult position. The outcast police are suspicious of us about the Raven Island attack. It's better to use a third party and have them take care of killing Luke Poe," explained the hooded man in a calm tone. The Spellman family had underestimated Luke's strength, so now they were in a complex situation. Seed's identity was discovered by the outcast police, and by doing an investigation, they were able to learn that this werewolf was related to the Spellmans, which raised suspicions. Thanks to the Spellmans having the best lawyers and people within the Outcast Council, they were able to defend themselves against the accusations. Seed the werewolf acted on his own. They were not involved, or so they claimed. Grudges between outcast families were legal, and both families could be at war without the authorities sticking their noses in. However, if the families involved third parties, things changed. Attacking Nevermore, America's premier school for outcasts, was serious business, and murdering one of the students was a crime. If this attack was planned by the Spellmans to kill Luke Poe, they could not let it go, for they had endangered several students who had no part in the grudge between the families. Sabrina, remembering how her assassination attempt on Raven Island failed, clenched her teeth in fury and said nothing. She felt a stinging pain in her left eye. It was now healed to perfection, but her father let her be one-eyed for several months to learn from her grave mistake. "What if the normie doesn't keep her word?" asked one of the hooded men. "If she revives Crackstone, she will likely attack Nevermore, and Luke Poe will die there by his hand. So it also serves us well if she completes the ritual. Then we will kill her for not keeping her word," the tall, hooded man said. He didn't care if Crackstone attacked Nevermore and killed many outcasts. His mission was to assassinate Luke Poe, nothing more than that. "We'll kill her anyway," he added after a few seconds. They couldn't leave Marilyn alive after this. "I understand," nodded the hooded man who had argued with Sabrina. "Are we going to help in the resurrection of Crackstone? He is our mortal enemy," commented a hooded man who had not spoken so far. "Crackstone is a human who made deals with demons to exterminate all outcasts. He killed many, but he was far from succeeding. His power is good, but it's nothing to worry about. After he attacks Nevermore and makes a killing, the outcast police will send their agents and kill him," replied the tall, hooded man. "As to your question, our mission is to assassinate Luke Poe using any method necessary. If Crackstone must be revived, he will be," he added, and the other hooded man nodded. Rowan was admitted to the hospital as a victim of a bear attack. Larissa had to personally talk to everyone involved in the Hyde attack to conceal the incident. Also to hide the fact that Rowan attempted to murder Wednesday. It would not be good for the school for those two things to come out. Luckily for her, Wednesday did not report Rowan. As for her parents, they heard about the incident and respected their daughter's decision. Morticia and Gomez believed it was a good experience for Wednesday to try to get killed. That's why they sent her to Nevermore. Strange parents. Of course, Rowan was expelled from Nevermore. They couldn't leave a psychologically unstable boy at the school. The reasons were secret. All the students, except those involved, thought he left school because of personal problems. Rowan was still in Jericho General Hospital recovering. The normie cops asked them some questions about the attack on Rowan, thinking it might have something to do with the murders of the past few days, but they came up with nothing useful. The attack on Rowan was sealed as a simple bear attack. The hospital ward was plunged into almost total darkness. Only the soft hum of the machines and the occasional beeping of the vital signs monitor broke the silence of the night. Rowan lay in bed, his breath slow and heavy, still recovering. The curtains, drawn tightly closed, kept the moonlight from entering the room. The darkness was total. Suddenly, one of those shadows seemed to move, slowly taking shape. A figure emerged from the darkest corner of the room. It was Wednesday, and she walked slowly toward Rowan. She stopped at the side of the bed and watched him without saying a word. Rowan's eyes opened slowly, as if he felt the presence of something or someone watching him in the dark. His eyes met Wednesday's black eyes that looked like the abyss itself. A great fear invaded Rowan. His heart rate began to rise, and his breaths increased. He thought Wednesday was coming to murder him and end the grudge. "Calm down," Wednesday said, her voice monotonous and cold as always. "I'm not here to kill you. Though if you scream, you will lose your head," she added, materializing her dark scythe that made Rowan tremble. Rowan tried to sit up, but a sharp pain forced him to lie down again, gasping, "What do you want?" Wednesday leaned slightly, stepping into the meager beam of light coming from the hallway under the door. Her face seemed paler than usual, and her presence was very scary, or so Rowan thought, who feared for his life. "I want to continue our conversation from a few hours ago, before the Hyde almost murdered you. Why did you want to kill me instead of Luke Poe?" asked Wednesday in a threatening tone. They were both in the stupid drawing Rowan showed her, but the boy only wanted to kill her. "It's not because of what you think. My mother told me that you would be the main cause of Nevermore's destruction. Luke Poe's importance was minor, though he must also be eliminated," Rowan replied quickly. He didn't want Wednesday to cut off his head with the scythe. Wednesday nodded internally. If she was the main cause, it would be better to eliminate her first, rather than focus on another variable. "So, what did it mean that Luke Poe appears in the drawing?" asked Wednesday. I don't remember, said Rowan, gripping his 100 painfully. His powers are driving him crazy, thought Wednesday disdainfully. Psychics with weak and unstable minds were prone to being driven mad by their powers. Remember, or else you'll lose your head, said Wednesday, pressing the scythe to Rowan's neck. She didn't feel sorry for Rowan. She just wanted answers, and if those satisfied her, she would let this pathetic psychic live. Rowan, with his life threatened, closed his eyes and began to remember, as painful as it was. He wanted to live if possible. Your partner, Rowan said after a few seconds haltingly. My partner, repeated Wednesday, thinking of Enid, who was her roommate. Luke Poe is your partner, the person who will help you destroy Nevermore. Or not. His role is changeable. I don't understand. Hurts, said Rowan. For every sentence he said, his tone increased and he felt more pain in his head, as if his brain was about to explode. Before Rowan could scream any louder, Wednesday gave him a sharp blow to the back of the head, knocking him out on the spot. How useless, thought Wednesday, who had more questions than answers. At least she got some information. She heard footsteps and knew someone was approaching. Luke Poe, my partner, thought Wednesday with a strange expression as she disappeared into the shadows. Several days had passed since Hyde's attack. Rowan had already left Jericho and was no longer a student at Nevermore. That day after class, Luke was called into Larissa's office. When he walked in, he noticed another person sitting across from Larissa. Her 2 long braids and black hair made him recognize the person immediately. Wednesday Adams. It looked like she had been there for a while, as they were both having tea, so they had to have had a conversation. Would she like to talk to both of us? Thought Luke as he approached Principal Larissa's desk. You wanted to talk to me, Principal? Asked Luke. Yes, Luke, sit down. I wanted to talk to both of you, said Larissa, motioning with her hand for Luke to take a seat. Luke sat down and looked at Wednesday, who was also looking at him, both with thoughts of their own. Luke was tempted to read the goth girl's thoughts, but held back. He didn't know if she had any defense or anything. Although he could read her mind, since he considers his mind reading much better than before, Wednesday could feel someone's intrusion into her mind, and here there is only one psychic without telling her. So, she would know it was Luke. You both fought the Hyde, right? Asked Larissa, and they both nodded slightly. I heard they gave him a good fight and had the upper hand. Thanks to that, none of the students were hurt. Thank you for protecting your classmates, said Larissa gratefully. If these 2 genius students were not there, Rowan would likely have died, and who knows what other casualties there would have been. I didn't fight that Hyde to save anyone. I only fought because I wanted to, Wednesday said without agreeing to receive thanks. Luke only nodded slightly. In his case, he did protect Enid, Xavier, Gia, and the others. Otherwise, he wouldn't have flown at full speed to kick Hyde in the head, who was about to jump at Gia and the others. He even saved Rowan, though he did so in consideration of Larissa and Nevermore. I fell in love and saved several people, thought Luke, looking back on what happened. When he walked into Nevermore, he would never think he would save anyone, let alone fall in love with a girl. Well, if you say that, I don't know about giving you the rewards I had thought about, said Larissa, taking a sip from her cup of tea. What rewards? Asked Luke, interested. He had already lost the VIP badge that allowed him to go to the exclusive bathroom with a jacuzzi and many more amenities. As for the exclusive swimming pool, it wasn't something he cared much about. 3 months to use the reps' bathrooms. Also, I will give them 2 days off so they can visit Jericho. You haven't used the ones you won in the competition yet, so you will have 4 days. If you want something specific, just ask me. I will see if I can offer it to you or not, Larissa replied with a smile. She had to reward the heroes of her school. Wednesday's face wavered at the use of the exclusive bathroom for 3 months. It was much better to bathe there because of all the amenities and that it was a bath all to yourself. You weren't supposed to share with the other students. However, she is very stubborn and would not back down. I don't want the reward. Don't fight to protect anyone, she said again. Fine, if that's what you want, Larissa said with a shrug. Then I'll have 6 months to use the VIP bathroom. asked Luke, hopefully. Just because she turns down the reward doesn't mean your reward is twice as valuable. It stays the same, Larissa replied. Wednesday, you can come back now. Luke, you stay, said Larissa, and Wednesday left the office without even saying goodbye. Typical of her. Natasha still hasn't returned. Do you know where she went? Asked Larissa after they were both alone. You know, to collect evidence against the Spellmans, Luke answered vaguely. Larissa, from the letter she read from Sophie several months ago, was aware that the Spellmans had made deals with demons. Although the only proof she had was the letter written by Sophie, Luke's deceased mother. Where, if she told me I could help her? Larissa asked. You know she wants to keep almost everything a secret. She won't even tell me 100% of things to me. Who knows where she is now? Luke replied, shaking his head. It was a lie, though. Natasha had told him where she was. Besides, they weren't just the clues his parents had hidden. They collected, they were also the clues from the previous Poe who fought and died fighting the Spellmans, like his grandparents. So searching for these clues was a very delicate matter. The information had to be kept as secret as possible. So Natasha told him not to tell anyone about this. Only he, she, and Edgar, who is a ghost, know. It's true, she was always like that. As for the 4 days you can leave Nevermore, I'm sorry, but I won't let you go out. It's dangerous, Larissa said, changing the subject. If he were a normal student, she would allow it, but he's not. She even thought the Hyde attack was about the Spellmans, but after learning that Hyde wanted to murder Rowan and not Luke, she dismissed it. As for that, Natasha permitted me to leave if I want to, and I have days allowed, Luke said, showing a conversation he had with the redhead on his cell phone to Larissa. They usually talk telepathically, but it's over 1,000 km away, so the link doesn't work. Oh, I see. I'll get in touch with her to confirm. If so, you can leave, though I don't recommend it given your situation, Larissa said with an odd expression. The sensible thing for her to do is for Luke not to leave Nevermore. I'll only go out if I have to, said Luke. Natasha let him roam free in Jericho for a reason. Luke told her that he possessed 3 auras. Since he discovered his 3rd aura at Nevermore, he hadn't had time to tell her that he discovered he possessed a white aura, as the redhead was too busy tracking down clues. Before she left Luke at Nevermore this year, she was able to test his strength and was no longer worried about him. She knew he could stand up for himself. After all, he was a 3 aura user. She had never seen a natural 3 aura user until now. That's all. If we need anything, just tell me. I'll help you, Larissa said, committed to helping her best friend's son who had died. Okay, thanks, Luke said gratefully, saying goodbye to Larissa and leaving the office. Thanks for watching this episode. Like, share, and follow for more interesting stories and narrations. Thanks a lot.